Welcome. I think we will go on and get started. Sorry for those of you who are waiting. We didn't mean to keep you waiting, but we just want to go on and get started. So thank you all for coming and joining us this afternoon and taking time to learn a little bit more about Karuna and to help us broaden our network. I'm Polly Byers, for those of you who don't know me. And before we start or go any further, I just want to note that we are recording this. So if you don't want to be recorded, you can turn off your video or change your name. So we will keep this to an hour as promised. So maybe we'll just quickly go over the agenda, which is that I'm going to do a brief background on Karuna, as there are a number of you who don't know us. Some of you know us very well. And then we're going to turn to our three speakers and then conclude with a brief discussion on how you can help us expand our network. So first, I just want to explain what is Karuna Connectors, which is a new initiative to provide an opportunity for interested people like yourselves, hopefully, to get a deeper understanding of Karuna's work and hear directly from our staff and our peacebuilding partners about what peacebuilding looks like on the ground. Obviously very different in different places. And in this series, the idea is to highlight different aspects of the work. Last time we talked about the power of dialogue. Today it's on the long-term challenges and need to support peacebuilding over the long haul. And at the same time, it's an effort to expand our network and support for the work. So briefly on sort of who we are, Karuna began in 1994, when peacebuilding was still an emerging field of practice. It was founded by a psychologist in Amherst, Paula Green, who many of you know, and began its work in Bosnia. And we're going to say more about that when we hear from Amra in a little bit. And it really became known for its innovative use of dialogue as a tool to catalyze peace across deep divides and foster reconciliation and trust. By nature, obviously, a long-term process. I would say that it was pretty innovative in its time, and increasingly there's been a lot of research which have documented the success of this kind of approach. There are a lot more organizations now than there were then that focus on peacebuilding, that are peacebuilding organizations. So it's quite an extensive field with a lot of different approaches and methodologies. But I think Karuna is really best known for its deep transformative work, which it's been engaged in since its inception. And you're going to hear from some true experts in the field shortly. So on the next slide, we have a little graphic of where we've worked, those little dots, if you can see them, over the last 27 years. It's been actually in more than 35 countries, predominantly Africa and Asia, as you can see, but other regions as well. So the work obviously is tailored and very different in the different locations, whether it's Bosnia or Senegal or Sri Lanka, and it focused on a wide range of divisions. In some cases like Sri Lanka, which we're going to hear from, the focus was on religious divides. In other countries, it's been on long-held ethnic tensions and animosities. And I just want to highlight that while much of Karuna's work has been on the community level, building peace obviously requires work at all levels of society. So accordingly, we work with a range of actors, governments, regional organizations, et cetera, to build connections between them. In some countries, we've been working more on the prevention side, while in others, it's been focusing on rebuilding social fabric after genocides in Rwanda and Bosnia, or in long simmering conflicts. So before we move on, I just want to briefly say a few words about today's session. We chose it because it's one of the key challenges faced in the peacebuilding work, which has been well documented over years. Addressing the root causes of conflict, often deeply held historical grievances, is not something that can be done with a peace treaty or an accord. It's a long-term generational process, as we can all see as we read the news today, whether we look at Sudan or Ethiopia or Bosnia or Myanmar, and more recently Bosnia, as I said, where we began, or right here in our own country. Statistically, about half of all post-war countries lapsed back into civil war in the first decade after fighting a stop, which is a rather daunting data point. So it's easy to understand how fragility and conflict present a really critical development challenge. So I won't go on, but there is ample data underscoring the need for sustained attention and support to peace building, which is often left incomplete. And what we're really trying to do, what Karuna is trying to do, is to stay involved and support our local partners over the long term. But unfortunately, funding to do that is often hard to find. which is why we're really working to expand our network and to be able to even provide small levels of support, as we have been doing to our partners in Sri Lanka, and we'd like to do in other places. So now we are going to turn and hear from our great partners who we are so grateful to have joining us today. So the last thing I want to say before turning it over to Olivia is that because we have 3 people speaking, we're not having a lot of time for question and answers, but if you have questions, please use the chat function, and we will try to take a few after we first hear from Rosette and then from Amra. So I'm now going to turn it over to Olivia Dreyer, who many of you know. She is my predecessor as the executive director of Karuna, and she began working with Paula really pretty much soon after Paula launched it, and has been deeply involved in most of Karuna's programs over many, many years, and happily for all of us is still quite involved closely in our work. So I'm going to turn it over to her and let her introduce Rosette, our first speaker.
Thanks so much, Polly, and greetings to everyone. So I get to interview Rosette Sebasoni, our really wonderful project manager in Rwanda. Rosette, why don't you introduce yourself first, and then I'll just say a word about our long history in Rwanda. Do you want to say just a little bit about your background and how you came to our project?
Thank you very much. I'm Rosette Sebasoni. I'm Rwandan, and I led the project called Healing Our Communities, promoting social cohesion in Rwanda. It was a project that was designed and implemented by Karuna Center for Peacebuilding in collaboration with 3 local NGOs in Rwanda that are working in a peace building. So I worked in peace building before, in reconciliation, in different areas, but I love it. That's my life.
Great, Rosette. And I'll get you to tell a little bit more about the project in just a sec. But backing up, Paula first went to Rwanda shortly after the 94 genocide. She actually first worked in the Hutu refugee camps in the Congo, doing nonviolent training. And then starting in 2002, Karuna Center got quite involved in various reconciliation projects, both community-based projects and some projects working with the government, the National Unity and Reconciliation Commission, the Justice Department, as they were preparing for a grassroots restorative justice process known as Gacaca. And so we were back and forth with various projects. We were also bringing students from the SIT program for a field seminar. And then in 2015, I did a conflict assessment for US aid. And the conception of this project really developed out of that. And I think it does speak to what Polly was saying about the importance of long-term engagement. It was just at the time where ex-perpetrators of the genocide were returning to their communities. And those who killed during the genocide were going back to where they had land and already living and would be living right next door to families where they may have killed family members or stolen land and animals or other kinds of crimes. And while the government had a very strong program around the justice process that many of you may be familiar with, there weren't really structures in place for this process of reintegration. And so the project that Rosette just mentioned was really thinking what would be based on what would be the key elements that would be really required to support that process of reintegration and reconciliation. And we, of course, wanted to work with various Rwandan organizations to do the work. So Rosette, maybe you can describe a little bit the project, the 3 organizations that were involved, and also speak to what you felt worked about the project. What had the most impact?
Thank you very much. the three local organizations that were involved in this Healing Our Communities project was the Aegis Trust that was working with the part of the youth engagement in peace building, and HEROC was the part of the trauma healing, and ERDP that was in the part of the dialogue clubs, like, yeah. So they were the three components of this project, and the Karuna Center was coordinating the activities in 16 communities of Rwanda in 8 districts of Rwanda. So I think briefly is that, yes.
Can you mention a little bit the model with the trauma healing? Because I think that was one of the unusual aspects of the approach.
Yes. For me, I think this was starting with the name of the project, Healing Our Communities. That was really something that was needed in Rwanda, because when you're talking about the community, you talk about all the categories of Rwandans that live in that community. So they are genocide survivors. We have ex-perpetrators, we have the returnees, we have the people who lived outside the country before genocide perpetrated against the Tutsi in 1994. So we have youth. So it is all these categories in the same community. So choosing the name, actually for me personally, I was saying that it says all. the name of the community, the project says all. So it was really unusual when you think about it, that the ex-perpetrators and the genocide survivors could have that trauma training together, but it worked very well. For me, I saw transformation by that trauma counseling and the trauma healing. Actually, they healed each other. They're still healing each other. The two categories, most especially. And when you talk of even the youth, because these are the children of those ex-perpetrators, those are the children of the survivors living together. So it was really very important that they benefit from this trauma healing together, so that they can for me, it was like to strengthen that frank dialogue between those two groups, so that they understand. Oh, excuse me.
No, it's fine.
Okay, sorry. So that they can really open up and they go to the real issues, because they have challenges. They have they are living with the inner wounds, both of them. So it was really very important, and we saw the transformation through the project, how it worked, and it impacted really their lives.
Yeah, just to emphasize for everyone, I think it was clear in what Rosette said, that the trauma healing workshops were for ex-perpetrators and survivors together. And they came to this recognition that whether they perpetrated atrocities or survived them, all had gone through trauma. And this was actually something that brought them together. Wouldn't you say, Rosette, that was really a key element, that this joint recognition?
Maybe just a bit of a background of those community members. The ex-perpetrators, all the crime that they did in that community. Right. So when they were in the prison for many years, they say 5, 10, 20, because this project came after 22 years. Yeah. So they were living with those burden, with these wounds, and they knew what they had done in the communities, because most of them, Gachacha, they talked about what they did. recognize that. So, and there was a mistrust, there was a fear, the worry, and the reintegration was really very difficult.
Yeah.
So it was really, even the genocide survivors, they had that fear. These guys are coming back to the communities. What is going to happen? So that's mistrust. That's putting them together. That combination really helped them to get together and see like I may say that, and with that frank conversation, they say that they were a bit able to open up and speak their hearts.
Yeah.
It was really very clear that no one was going to touch another, but even from their testimonies, if I may maybe mention some of the cases, there are some of the perpetrators who were saying that after the returning back, he could not pass through his neighbors, the survivors' the house. He was going to pass like just spending our time, the longer time, to reach to the sector level, to the local office. And when they were going like for a meeting, the community meeting, he could not pass through his house because he didn't want to give him a ride. He has a bicycle.
Uh-huh.
So after the trauma healing, after that training, and they used to be together, he could call him before going, pass by his house, taking him with his bicycle, and go together. There's another testimony of a survivor who was saying that, I used to say that I don't want to meet him. Okay, we'll be meeting when there are many people, but I don't want to meet him when we are alone, because he was really fearing what could happen. But after that trauma healing and counseling, because they have, even we used to have in the project what we call the celebrations, the trauma healing, and we get to have the celebrations of what they have achieved. So they used to share drinks and everything. So then after she told us that when that ex-perpetrator got sick, she was the first one to be at the hospital to see him, and they were alone. So they get to to talk and really to get together. So I have many testimonies. Actually, we don't have that time.
Yeah.
But we have many testimonies whereby even one of the survivors used to have, because of the trauma, he used to have each and every morning period of April from 7 work. We have a week of the morning period in Rwanda. So she used to be in the hospital all the time, and I didn't know really which kind of that, because she could just have pains and a lot of pain. And after that, the training and being the trauma healing companion, it disappeared completely.
That's
and
extraordinary. Yeah.
Completely, and she was just testifying that.
So I think
really
we're gonna. I hate to stop you, Rosette, and we there are so many stories to tell. Rosette and I are actually talking about how to gather them into some kind of a booklet. But just very quickly to say that after the trauma healing workshops, an ex-perpetrator and survivor were chosen from each community for more in-depth training, and they became healing companions for that community. And Healing Companions was the title. And Rosette was telling me that she's still in touch with them. They have a WhatsApp group, and the Healing Companions are still very, very active, even though the program is now well over. It's been a year or so. But Polly, it sounds like there's some questions.
Yeah, we are kind of, we're running a little late, but let me just ask And there's a lot of comments about how impressive the work is, and it is. I mean, when I heard about this work, I have to say it kind of blew my mind. I think it's really incredible. So Bisrat asked, what kind of strategies and methods did you use to facilitate the dialogue?
So we had the three components, as I said, that the dialogue, it was choosing participant first of all. Their local leaders with the community members that were part of the project. Then they were joining the dialogue that was done twice a month, and there were subjects, and then we had dialogue facilitators that were coming from the communities, and they are still there and they're still contributing, of course, with the community. We also had youth. So, and those youth, we had leaders. So the leaders were called youth champions. And we had the trauma healing part, which we're really talking about. And they have and still have the healing companions. The healing companions were trained, and we had the basic workshops. Then after that, they were having more refresher trainings, and sessions that were really strengthening them to be able to go back in their communities and contribute. So the trauma healing, we're going back, and they used to train other community members as they were trained. And we had many sessions, like the training facilitators, they became the training facilitators, and we always had one person from the project to be part of them, like when they have some challenges of experience and all that. And we used to have many activities that put them together. The trauma, the ones on the side of the trauma healing, and others with the dialogue club, because we have clubs, and the youth. So we used to have the intergenerational meetings. So the intergenerational meetings, the young, and the adults used to choose like a topic that will be talked about. Then the dialogue facilitators facilitate the discussion, and it continues like that. We also, those youth also used to have. We used to have they were trained to do some films, the movies, and they used to take testimonies from their parents, from their neighbors who are the project participants. And we used to have many activities that were putting the participants together, including the listening sessions that were happening in the communities, and the listening session that happened 1 year at the national level with the government officials. So we used to have that. But one thing I may say, these healing companions are really contributing a lot with the community, helping the community members, like with their active listening that they learned, and everything that they learned, and their willingness really to contribute and to show by examples, because they are living together very well. Of course, you understand that it's a process. Some had some challenges that before even the project ends, we had a survey to know how it is going on, and they were able to be helped to at least to increase their levels, and they are still being taken as the people who are being consulted for many areas, especially helping with the healing.
So Rosette, I This has been really wonderful to hear you speak about the program. And I think we probably do need to move on. Is that right, Polly?
It is. I'm very sorry. I mean, we could go on for more than an hour, and they're really good questions. Matt Levenger's just asked a very important question, but I feel like we have to move on. And I mean, I'm sorry, but I can't thank you enough, Rosette. I mean, it's amazing, as you can all hear. I mean, it's amazing work. It's truly amazing work. And I think you've gotten a taste of all the many different elements that are involved. I mean, it's multifaceted, multidimensional, intergenerational. I mean, and I think that's, you know, good part of why it's been so successful. So Rosette, thank you for staying up so late to talk to us.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think we need to have some other time to talk about it.
I think we do.
The project, one of the things that we're happy about is the sustainability of the project. When we see like how the people became and the continuity of what we have been doing, even if they don't have any funds. So it is really very interesting.
Yeah, that is and that is, you know, that's the theme. That's the theme here today of how do you, and, you know, how do we as a, you know, as a partner try to support that. But that's what's been so impressive to see the work continuing, and which we hope to continue to be able to support. So I can't thank you enough, Rosette, for joining us and for your amazing work. You, we are really grateful to have had you here today. Okay, so I'm sorry to move on, but you're going to enjoy hearing from Amra Pandžo, who is joining us from Sarajevo. Both of these ladies, it's quite late. It's 10 and 11 o'clock in Sarajevo and Kigali. So I'm going to just quickly introduce her. And I do want to note, as I'm introducing her, that, as I said before, Bosnia is where Karuna began. A request came from Paula, who I think has joined us now, to help Bosnian Muslim women who were traumatized by war. Many were teachers, and some of whom had survived the rape camps, and they suggested intergroup dialogue between Bosnian Muslim and Serb teachers, both men and women. And out of that, Karuna's approach to intergroup dialogue kind of evolved organically. So we are very lucky to have Amra, who is a native of Sarajevo, joining us from there, and particularly grateful that she stepped in rather at the last minute as another close partner of Karuna's had a family emergency. Amra has dedicated herself to building peace and confidence among those recovering from the horrors of war in Bosnia and Herzegovina and other areas of the world. She was the in-country project director of Karuna's Project STAR, which stands for Societal Transformation and Reconciliation, which just ended last year. This is the most recent work that Karuna's done, and which Karuna led with Amra as the in-country director, working in collaboration with 3 local peace-building organizations. Amra has many publications, and she's currently working on her PhD, which I think is keeping her quite busy. And she was named one of 11 women who built peace in post-war Bosnia and Herzegovina. So we are so happy you could join us. So Amra, I'm going to really turn it over to you to tell us a little bit about yourself and also about the work you've done with Karuna. And obviously, I know people are interested and concerned about what's going on in Bosnia right now. It sort of speaks to this theme of the long-term nature and challenge of peace building. So with that, I turn it over to you.
Hello, Polly. Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be with you tonight. I prefer that you maybe ask the questions, because then we will go very wide and we really don't have a time. So it may be better that we try to keep it like form of interview, as you said. And like I will try to answer your first question, and it is probably the people are very interested what is situation now in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I will just say in several sentences that I believe that the war is not something what's going to happen very soon. I don't know in 5 or 10 years what will happen, because this area is always like trembling in a way. At the moment, I don't think that is the danger, but from the other side, we are really in very, very serious political crisis. All our state institutions are frozen. Cooperation on political level is minimum, and it very much affect life of usual people. So it means that simply state cannot function. Economical situation, also due to the COVID crisis, is worse and worse. We had a horrible year because we don't have very good healthy system, and we had a lot of deaths, a lot of lost. Also, our vaccination is now the lowest in Europe, 22%. Not because we have people who are anti-vaxxers, but because we have hardly getting the vaccines, to get them. And generally, situation is very hard in sense of people who are depressed, disoriented, passive, and young people mostly are trying to leave the country. It was also before, but now during these last 2 years, really, it's hard to find anyone who would say of young people that they see the future here. So it's not really shiny situation, but that's why we need more and more peace building, more and more our effort and spirit to try to connect, Karuna connectors. So we connect. We need to connect people to try to open some conversation, to start to have dialogue, because whatever happened at the end, we always again will have to live together and to have dialogue and to live in peace.
Can you talk a little bit, Amra, about what the STAR project did, what the focus was? And it had, in some areas, it was more successful than other areas, as we know, and maybe just very briefly, what the objective was, where you think it was successful, and where the needs are. Obviously you talked broadly about it, but where, peace building, whether international or locally, could be helpful right now, and what particular areas and what approaches. But I think starting with just describing STAR would be interesting to people.
STAR project had three dimensions actually, which were in the beginning part of the project. The first and always most important one was working with young people, actually providing them with peace building education, including art as one dimension of sending the message of the peace building, also facing past, trying to remember the past, to memorize actually in a way which is constructive for the future and good for the future. We had the measure where we tried to work interfaith or interreligious dialogue, and the third one was to work with the municipality and government and local officials on peace building subjects and actually strategy for the futures. I must say that this dimension with the religion didn't work so well. We had, and that was really, I can say, kind of seed of the beginning of this crisis, what we are feeling now. I think that we also didn't reach so much in that political part of the society, and they were already closed. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, religion is actually just like shadow of the politics, and they were following trends which were just started. So they forbid, for example, religious teachers who were the target group of our project to mix with others. And it was already, in the air that we could. That something that things are getting worse and worse, that we are not going in good direction. From the other side, young people are hard fortunately to be controlled, and we had a great success with 6,000 young people who were targeted through the Proni Youth Club in 4 cities. So youth club for the young people, through the excellent training for peace building and peace camps organized by Center for Peace Building in Sanski Most, in one part, northern part of Bosnia, with the Sarajevo Film Festival, where organization here organized films and facing the past. They brought young people from all Bosnia and Herzegovina to watch film festival and also theater festival, mass, and to speak about living together and perspectives for peace in the context of art. And that's amazing thing, really. I can say that until now, the Viber groups of they call themselves Star Youth. We didn't do that really. It was nothing from the above. Us as the Karuna office and me as a country director actually didn't write that even in proposal that they will have kind of a huge Viber group after the project, but it just comes up that they became the part of big family. And I'm in contact with a lot of them still, and they really transform so much, and they will never be the same. So how they are going to build a future, I don't know, but I think that's something what really we as the Karuna gave as a gift to Bosnia in that period.
That's wonderful. I mean, that's wonderful to hear, actually, that I didn't quite know that they are such a cohesive group that came out of that. I'm curious, and we really have like hardly any time, but if you were, in terms of what is needed now, obviously, some areas, as you said, we weren't so successful for various reasons on the religious leaders front, which makes sense given what you're saying. But for whether external or internally support, given the situation, which is obviously very tense right now, what kind of support do you think is in terms of priorities? Obviously, what's been effective is, coming from different angles, using art, using a lot of different approaches. But what would you say about that, of where you would direct support if you were directing it in terms of the priorities?
So we are really in phase where we definitely need third side, like mediators and I'm sorry, like facilitators, the people who are very experienced. I would like that Paula and Ledera, and I don't know if he's live, Adam Quirl, and that people who are really very experienced in mediation and negotiation come, and that we start to have negotiation and dialogue process on all levels. So we need to start to have like round tables, open program on TV, something very loud, and something what is on social networks, where we will have strong mediators who are not from any of these narratives, who will have very pure intention to start to reconcile those narratives and try to touch, if it's still possible, sincere part of the people who are in the positions to make decisions, So to start to communicate with a human side, because we are now in a crazy process of dehumanization, and it's really danger, and as you all know, for the peace. So I think that starting the open dialogue with open questions and facing that what people really think is very important. And actually our politicians are mafia who stole a lot of money, and they are keeping themselves in power by producing these conflicts. And it's important that we have some people who will go out and say that, and finally that we will have to, I don't know how other to say, like to free or to occupy our political positions in media, positions at university, and people from civil sector are now they are state intentionally are trying to ignore them and to put them in position that they become very poor, as COVID also brought in that situation, that international funds for peace are very poor. There are no possibility to apply, and state is openly against that, to put us in any kind of position where we can do something, because You think that it would be possible that Dodik do that what he does if, for example, me or Miss Amela Pulek-Shank, who is I'm regarding her, I'm sending her best regards. I see that she's here in audience. If we are, for example, part of some ministries, it wouldn't be possible. You know, it's simply not that culture which we would bring. But with the people who they are keeping on those positions, we have this horrible situation. So this is the moment really when we need the help from out. Fortunately, foreign politicians recognize that, and we have now a lot of help from Brussels, from European Union, from USA, and people are coming, negotiating, telling that Bosnia-Herzegovina will not fall apart. And they're also frightened because this could be this if something start to happen here again, that could really influence that whole Europe explode, because we have problem in Slovenia, we have problem with Hungary, we have that right wing which is really strong now in Europe, and I'm afraid that Brussels also feel that they need to keep peace here.
Yeah. No, the ramifications are obviously really frightening, and at least, I mean, that's the one little, I guess, glimmer of good news is that it has gotten attention, people's attentions in Brussels and Brussels and elsewhere. So I wish we could keep you for longer and ask you questions, but I feel like we can't because we have to move on. But I have to just only, thought and commentary is that, boy, is it a case study in a really, awful way. But the whole theme here about the long-term nature of peace building. Here we are in 2021, in a way going back, to, needing facilitators and, multiple levels. Obviously, there's the generational issue, which we're working to, but it's so multi-layered. And here we are, at a really kind of delicate, sensitive, fragile point. So it sort of underscores in a painful way, the need for ongoing engagement and support. So Amra, I cannot thank you enough. I really appreciate you being here, and we will be in touch. So thank you so much. Yeah, people waving. Okay, so I have to quickly shift gears, and I realize we over programmed, but we're going to just quickly hear. It's a 5-minute video, a little interview of our program manager, our senior program manager, Daniel Orth, interviewing Ravindra Kandage, who is a partner from Sri Lanka, and he is the vice president of Sarvodaya and the executive director of Sarvodaya Shanti Sena, and which consists of 120,000 youth volunteers dedicated to peace building. And we were a partner with them in 2011, 2013, and continue to provide little bits of ongoing support to the organization. And this is a brief snippet of an interview between Daniel and Ravi. So here we go.
About staying for the long term, peace building being a process that takes time. Over the course of that project, what kind of changes did you see in the individuals who were involved and the communities of Sri Lanka's eastern region where the project was focused?
Yes, the eastern region of Sri Lanka was very badly affected by the armed conflict. So the tension among the communities remained same even after the armed conflict. There were no any interrelation even among the religious leaders in the area. They treated each other as enemies. There was no trust in each other. They didn't work together. They did not have any opportunities to work together as one nation. The project activity helped in creating a significant attitudinal change in religious leaders and communities. They help to restore trust in people. The examples, religious leaders began to visit each other's places of worship. They started to participate religious diversity in day-to-day life.
I know, Ravi, that the formation of the local interfaith councils was one of the key outcomes of that first Sarodaya Karuna project. Can you tell us more about how those councils were formed and how those councils have continued to contribute to reconciliation and peace building in Eastern Sri Lanka over the past 10 years since the project concluded?
Yeah, actually, I am very happy to say that because our very successful outcome in our religious district religious leaders council, the local interfaith council were formed in the 3 project districts by the religious leaders involved in the project. Actually, these councils were formed naturally during the implementation process of the project. At the project stage of the project, interfaith dialogue were created in the order in identify through values of peace building of their own religious and strength their true religious values. Then interfaith dialogue were held among the interreligious leaders. After completing these dialogues, community projects were developed and implemented by these religious leaders. They designed and implemented these community projects as one group in their respective district. These religious leaders become much stronger and sustained as the team while working for their community projects. Eventually, those groups were established as interfaith council. Accordingly, this interfaith council was a key outcomes of the interventions. These interfaith council were able to showcase the interreligious cooperation as a major contributor to peace building and national reconciliation. The religious leaders of this council presented a series of proposals of strengthening national reconciliation in the country to national and regional policymakers. In addition, these councils supported the reconciliation process carried out by the government in the various ways. Their services toward national reconciliation and peace building still continues.
Wow, so almost more than a decade on.
Yeah. This council is still engaged in conflict resolution whenever new issues areas in respective areas intervene as early warning mechanism to avoid further conflict and social issues. Many organizations have followed our footsteps by taking this concept in Interfaith Council as an example. Some of senior religious leaders of this council are no longer with us because they have passed away. However, the second generation of this council continues to work towards national reconciliations. Those who joined this council as young and junior religious members are today leading this council as the senior leaders. Because in the last 10 years, our councils are continuously working in creating the background and we are building the stage of our project.
Okay, thanks for that. And I'm sorry about the you maybe couldn't see it as well as you might have. We would have wished there, because there were some great video clips between the two of old footage from the program that was really quite good. I'm not sure if you could see it. So I am sorry we are so pressed for time. Daniel, I know you're there. If briefly, is there anything else that Ravi, you had a longer interview with him, obviously, but points that you think are worth making? And obviously he underscores, a lot of the points we've been hearing, but maybe just if you have anything to add, Daniel.
Yeah, thanks, Polly. It's very surreal watching yourself on Zoom do a video on Zoom. You heard Ravi say a couple of things that I just wanted to draw attention to. I mean, one, the fact that the approach that Karuna and Sarodaya were taking, was replicated by others. I mean, the fact that this had proven so successful, so impactful that other entities started to do the same thing that we were doing, I think is a real, testament to the quality of the program that was happening. And also really importantly, the fact that, this project is still going, potentially 8 to 10 years from when it started. Ravi was actually in the field this weekend. I had a hard time trying to track him down for our video because he was meeting with some of these councils over the course of the weekend. I mean, so these things are very much alive and real and happening and doing important work today, which is really the theme of today's Karuna Connector event. And then you also heard him talk about how, you know, in terms of sustainability, you're now into the second generation of leaders who are part of these councils, folks who had been there for the inception, who have died or retired or left, who have been replaced by a new generation of younger religious leaders who have stepped in. So I just think it really speaks to, you know, the power of this project, specifically the importance of sustainability and staying long-term in a community with a partner and doing that work. So yeah, it was a great opportunity to speak to Ravi, and I'm sorry we couldn't have him here live, but I think it's like 3 o'clock in the morning in Sri Lanka right now. So
yeah, I think that's about right. So thank you. That was really helpful because I think you kind of pulled out and underscored a lot of the key points that we're kind of trying to highlight here. And it is really interesting just to hear about how, you know, these very different projects actually, but, you know, how they have maintained in different shapes and forms. But obviously, you know, having some support is helpful, but it was, I think, really interesting to hear from him. And I'm glad you had that great conversation. I'm glad we could share it with all of you, even briefly. And I know Elizabeth Kifitashvili is mentioning that we did shorten it up, that there's a lot more that we could have and should have said, but it is, as Elizabeth's noted, it's a great organization. And so we are very, very proud and happy to partner with them. So with that, because I'm looking at the time, we are going to shift just briefly to our little wrap up. So if the real point of where we wanted to conclude here is to, after thanking the presenters, number one, to Rosette and Amra and Ravi, to the message of really is that we need you. So as we indicated at the beginning, in addition to learning more about Karuna, and Laura, if you could maybe move the slides, the other part of this work is to extend our network and to be able to support and do more of this kind of work in the future. You know, as we look forward in the next 5 years, we are hoping to do both more work in the US. We feel it's incumbent on us to, as a, you know, primarily international peace building organization, to apply our experience here. And we are working on the issues of climate justice and Native American issues, and hope to do more actually on the area of violent extremism here in the US. And the other key area is really focusing on how we deepen our relationships with some of the partners that you have heard here today, and how to be able to really build their capacity, which is why we're redoubling our effort to shift our focus to supporting partner capacity. But as I said in the beginning, there isn't a lot of funding for that kind of ongoing, sustained work. It tends to be, you know, a lot of money when there's something is really hot in terms of a conflict. So that's why we really need your support. So we have a fall campaign, which we have an ambitious goal of trying to raise $150,000, which was going to help us sort of have the flexibility to do what needs to be done, which really can't be done with the limited scope of funding that we have with our government grants. And our goal is really to build a future where Karuna and his partners are thriving. So Giving Tuesday, which I'm sure you all know about, obviously is a great way to meet new supporters. And, you know, maybe one thing you can do is share this campaign with your networks. So moving ahead to the practical of, you know, how you can help. We have suggestions. Obviously you can contribute, which is always wonderful. And if you can, please consider increasing your gift as we try to launch this campaign. And I think Audrey is going to drop a link, which is there, into the chat for donations. And we're also dropping a link for a form to sign up for other ways you can help to the campaign, including, you know, one of our key goals, as I've tried to articulate, is expanding the network. So whether that's with private foundations, whether that's introducing us to new donors, people who might be interested, that would all be, you know, hugely helpful. So we've got, you know, there's Giving Tuesday. There's you know, it would be wonderful to have a matching gift to help inspire new donors, to share our emails and share our posts across social media. if you are a social media person. I realize that is not all of us, which includes me, and not being one. And we're also happy to host a Karuna Connector event like this, you know, kind of a talk. People used to have house parties. Obviously, nobody's doing much of that these days, but we're happy to do that. So hopefully that gives you some ideas of different ways in which you can help us. So, you know, the final thing is really just to say, to stay connected really here. So in closing, I just want to give a huge thanks to all of you for attending. I know there's a lot of other things that everybody could be doing with their afternoons and evenings. So it's greatly appreciated. And we'd really love to hear from you. Really, that's the message here. If you have ideas, big or little, please be in touch. And, you know, if you can, to challenge you to take one action, if you can, after this meeting, that will help expand the network. So last but not least, I do want to say this is a series, and our next meeting is going to be in 2 months, on January 18th, on the issue of climate change, the impact of climate change on conflict, which is something we're seeing very directly in our work in Nigeria, in which I recently did an op-ed, and we are going to be talking about in other venues. So that's coming up next. Invite anybody who's interested. You'll get a notice. And the one after that in March is going to be on women, peace, and security. So that's just a little sense of what's coming. So with that, I see that we have actually amazingly ended on time. I'm sorry to have rushed through things with our great presenters, but I just want to thank you all. Thank you all for being here, and hope to see you again. Bye-bye.